The silent Cosmos Commander Zara Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as another star system fell to darkness. A holographic display showed red warning symbols spreading across the galaxy like a disease. Each symbol represented worlds consumed, civilizations destroyed, and billions of lives lost to the void swarm. The Kalari homeworld had been the latest victim. 3 billion souls had called that blue-green planet home just 48 hours ago. Now there was nothing left but empty space and the metallic debris of what had once been a thriving civilization. The void swarm left no survivors, took no prisoners, and showed no mercy. Zara's forearms trembled as she adjusted the controls on her command console. As a Threnody, she had lived for over 3 centuries and commanded fleets for half that time. She had seen wars that spanned decades and conflicts that consumed entire sectors. But nothing had prepared her for this horror that had emerged from the space between galaxies. "Commander, the Helix defense line has fallen," reported her communications officer, Kelvin Dar. The young Zentari's blue skin had turned pale with fear. His usually steady voice cracked as he delivered the devastating news. All 73 ships lost. No survivors detected. The Helix defense line had been their strongest fortification. Built over 50 years by the combined efforts of 12 different species, it should have held against any conventional force. The massive battle stations had been armed with weapons that could crack moons and shielding that could withstand direct hits from Stellar-class weapons. The fact that it had fallen in less than 6 hours spoke to the terrifying power of their enemy. Status on civilian evacuations from the core worlds? Zara asked, though she feared the answer. 17 million rescued from the Antares system, but we lost 42 million on the outer colonies. The numbers hit Zara like physical blows. Each digit represented families torn apart, children who would never see their parents again. Entire cultures erased from existence. Zara turned to face the massive viewing screen that dominated the front of her bridge. Through it, she could see the remnants of what had once been the Third Fleet. 37 ships remained from the original force of over 200. Most showed battle damage, their hulls scarred by weapons that ate through matter itself. Many of her vessels limped along on emergency power, their crews working desperately to keep life support functioning. The void swarm was unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. Their ships seemed to be constructed from living shadow-given form. They moved through space in perfect coordination, like a single organism with 1,000 bodies. Their weapons fired streams of pure entropy that unraveled the very atoms of whatever they touched. Conventional shields were useless against them. Energy weapons only seemed to make them stronger. "Sir, we're receiving another distress call from the Proxima Defense Station," reported Lieutenant Zara Moon Whisper, her feline features drawn with exhaustion. The Feliner officer had been working without rest for 3 days straight. "They're requesting immediate reinforcement." "What forces do we have available?" Zara knew the answer before she asked, but protocol demanded the question. "None, sir. Every ship we have is either destroyed, disabled, or already committed to other defensive actions." Zara's tail twitched with the stress that her species felt. When delivering bad news, Zara closed her primary eyes and focused through her secondary pair, a meditation technique her people used in times of extreme crisis. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. The void swarm had consumed 47 star systems in the past 6 months. Their rate of expansion was increasing exponentially. At current rates, they would reach the core worlds within 2 standard months. The Galactic Alliance represented over 300 species and controlled nearly 10,000 star systems. They had fleets that numbered in the tens of thousands, weapons that could destroy planets, and defensive technologies perfected over millennia of warfare. None of it mattered against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each victory. "Commander, what are your orders?" Kelvin's question brought her back to the immediate crisis. Zara looked around her bridge at the officers she had served with for decades. These beings had followed her through conflicts across half the galaxy. They trusted her to find solutions when situations seemed hopeless. But for the first time in her long career, she had no answers. Send a general distress signal to all known civilizations, she finally ordered. Maximum power, all frequencies, every communication protocol in our database. Sir? Zara looked confused. We've already contacted every member species of the Alliance. Not just Alliance members, Zara replied. Everyone. Every species we have records of, no matter how primitive or isolated. Include the newcomers on. The rim worlds. Even send it to those human settlements in the Sol system. Several officers exchanged glances. The humans were barely more than a curiosity to most galactic civilizations. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago and had established only a handful of colonies beyond their home system. Their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards, their military forces insignificant. Sir, the humans have maybe a dozen ships total, Kelvin pointed out gently. Their entire fleet couldn't match one of our destroyers. I know, Zara said quietly, but we're sending the message to everyone. If we're going to die, at least we'll die knowing we asked for help from every corner of the galaxy. The communication went out on subspace frequencies that would reach every inhabited system within 3 days. It carried the full weight of the Alliance's desperation. Technical specifications about the Void Swarm, tactical analyses of their weaknesses, and a simple plea for any assistance that could be provided. Most responses came within hours. The Andromedans offered to accept refugees, but had no military forces to spare. The Crystal Singers of Vega would provide their artistic archives to preserve culture, but could not fight living beings. The Machine Lords of Rigel would share defensive technologies, but refused to commit their fleets to what they calculated as a lost cause. From the humans came only silence. Still no response from the Sol system? Zara asked during her daily briefings. Nothing, Commander. Our signals are reaching them, but they haven't acknowledged receipt. Zara checked her instruments again. It's possible their communication systems aren't advanced enough to decode our emergency protocols. Or they were too smart to get involved. In a war they couldn't win, Zara thought, but didn't say aloud. The humans had always been cautious in their dealings with galactic civilization. They attended trade conferences, maintained small diplomatic missions, and generally kept to themselves. Perhaps they had decided that discretion was the better part of valor, that the war continued its inexorable advance. The Void Swarm consumed the Tau City system, then Delta Pavonis, then Wolf 359. Each victory made them stronger and more coordinated. Intelligence reports suggested they were not just destroying civilizations, but somehow absorbing their knowledge and capabilities. Asterisk, it was during the fall of the Centauri colonies that something changed. Commander, we're detecting massive gravitational disturbances from the direction of Sol, reported Chief Science Officer Dr. Korvac Stormwind. The elderly Draconian's voice carried a note of confusion that was rare for someone of his experience. The readings are ... unprecedented. Zara hurried to the science station. The displays showed waves of gravitational distortion rippling through space-time itself. The patterns were unlike anything in their databases. Natural phenomena like collapsing. Stars or black hole mergers had their own signatures. This was something else entirely. Could it be a new Void Swarm weapon? She asked. Dr. Stormwind shook his great horned head. The distortions are too organized, too controlled. This is technology, but not like anything we've seen before. Distance. To the source? Asterisk, approximately 50 light years in closing. Whatever is generating these distortions is moving faster than should be theoretically possible. Zara felt a chill run through her forearms. Faster than light speed? Much faster. At current rate of approach. Dr. Stormwind paused to double-check. His calculations. It will reach our position in 6 hours. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Everyone understood the implications. If this was a new Void Swarm weapon, one capable of faster-than-light travel, then even retreat would be impossible. But if it wasn't the Void Swarm, then what could it be? "Sir, should we alter course to avoid the approaching object?" asked Navigator. Plex Swiftwind. Zara considered the options. They could run, but where? The Void Swarm had cut off most escape routes. They could fight, but against an unknown enemy with capabilities beyond their understanding. Or they could wait and hope that whatever was coming might be an answer to their desperate prayers. Asterisk. Maintain current position, she decided. All ships to battle stations, but do not power weapons unless I give direct orders. Whatever is coming, we'll face it with dignity. The hours that followed felt like years. Across the fleet, crews prepared for what might be their final battle. Engineers worked to coax maximum power from damaged systems. Gunners loaded their most powerful ammunition. Medical staff prepared for casualties. They might never have the chance to treat Dot as the gravitational distortions grew stronger. Something else began to happen. The constant chatter of communications across the fleet started to fade. Even the background hum of electronic systems seemed to quiet. It was as if space itself was holding its breath. "Commander, I'm losing contact with the outer picket ships," Kelvin reported. "All communications are being disrupted by the gravitational interference." Through the main viewer, they could see space itself beginning to twist. Stars shifted position as light bent around the approaching disturbance. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple like water, disturbed by some massive, unseen presence. And then, without warning, something impossible appeared on their sensors. Asterisk, when giants wake, the USS Titan's Wrath materialized from hyperspace like a mountain torn from the earth and hurled into the void. At 22 kilometers in length, it dwarfed every ship in the Alliance fleet combined. Its hull was a deep charcoal gray that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its angular design spoke of a civilization that valued function over form. Captain Marcus Steele stood on the bridge of humanity's most ambitious creation and watched as space unfolded around them. At 45 years old, he had commanded vessels in the deepest regions of human space, but nothing had prepared him for the sight that greeted them upon arrival at their destination. The remnants of the Alliance fleet floated before them like wounded birds trying to maintain formation. Their ships showed the devastating marks of prolonged warfare. Hull breaches sealed with emergency patches, weapon arrays dark and lifeless, and the energy signatures of vessels running on minimum power to preserve life support. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Chan from her position at the science station. She was humanity's foremost expert on alien technology, but even her extensive knowledge hadn't prepared her for seeing the aftermath of galactic war. "Marcus, these ships have been through hell." Marcus nodded grimly. The intelligence reports they had received during their 3-week journey from Earth had painted a dire picture, but seeing the reality was far more sobering. These weren't just damaged ships. They were the survivors of a civilization fighting for its very existence. "Communications. Open a channel to the lead Alliance vessel," Marcus ordered. "All frequencies, all protocols in our database." Lieutenant Commander Jake Rivers, humanities specialist in xenolinguistics, began working at his console. At 32, Jake had mastered 17 alien languages and communication protocols. His work had been largely theoretical until now, but this moment would test everything he had learned. "Captain, I'm detecting active scans from multiple Alliance "Vessels," reported Chief Tactical Officer Amanda Torres. "Their sensor arrays are trying to map our ship, but our hull composition is interfering with their readings. The Titan's Wrath had been constructed using materials that didn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Human scientists had spent decades developing meta-alloys that could manipulate gravitational fields and composite armor that existed partially in folded space-time. The ship wasn't just large. It operated on principles that most galactic civilizations had considered impossible. Let them scan, Marcus decided, but keep our weapons powered down. We're here to help, not to threaten." Through the main view screen, they could see the Alliance flagship slowly turning to face them. It was a beautiful ship, clearly designed by a species that valued aesthetic as well as function. Its curves and flowing lines were a stark contrast to humanity's angular engineering. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the Alliance commander," Jake reported. "It's coming through on emergency frequencies, multiple languages simultaneously. Put it on screen." Asterisk. The main viewer shifted to show the bridge of the Alliance flagship. A tall, slender being with 4 arms, what appeared to be multiple eyes, stood at the center of the space. Her skin was a pale blue-green, and her movements had a fluid grace that spoke of a species adapted to low-gravity environments. When she spoke, her voice was melodious despite the tension it carried. Jake's translation system provided subtitles as her words were processed through their linguistic database. "Unknown vessel, I am Commander Zara Voss of the Galactic Alliance Third Fleet. Identify yourself and state your intentions." Marcus stepped forward, ensuring he was visible on their transmission. "Commander Voss, I am Captain Marcus Steele of the United Earth Colonial Navy. We received your distress signal and have come to offer assistance." There was a long pause. Marcus could see confusion on the faces of the alien bridge crew. Several of them were looking at displays that probably showed the impossible readings from the Titan's Wrath. "Captain Steele," Commander Voss finally replied, "your vessel does not match any ship class in our databases. Our sensors indicate your ship is over 20 kilometers in length. No civilization we know of has constructed vessels of this magnitude." "That's because we built something new," Marcus replied simply. "Commander, we understand you're facing an enemy called the Void Swarm. We've analyzed your data transmissions and believe we can help." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the ship's chief engineer, leaned forward from her station. "Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from several Alliance vessels. Their fusion reactors are failing." Marcus could see the strain on Commander Voss's face. Her people were dying, and she had no idea whether these newcomers represented salvation or another threat. "Commander Voss, we have medical facilities and engineering teams standing by," Marcus offered. "Allow us to render assistance to your damaged vessels while we discuss the larger situation. Your ship ... How is it possible?" Commander Voss asked. "The energy requirements to move something that large, the structural integrity needed to prevent it from tearing itself apart, ... double quotes, Sarah Chun stepped into the transmission's range. "Commander, we've developed technologies that manipulate space-time itself. Our ship doesn't move through space in the conventional sense. We fold space around us and step through the gaps." Marcus could see the Alliance bridge crew exchanging glances that clearly indicated disbelief. He didn't blame them. What humanity had accomplished in secret over the past 50 years would have been considered fantasy by most galactic civilizations. Asterisk. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim," reported Tactical Officer Torres. "Multiple contacts moving in perfect formation. Configuration matches the Void Swarm ships from our intelligence briefings. The battle that had been postponed by humanity's arrival was about to begin whether they wanted it or not." Marcus looked at the Alliance fleet with their damaged ships and exhausted crews, and at his own vessel with its untested technologies and untrained crew. Commander Voss, how long until the Void Swarm reaches this position? Approximately 4 hours, Captain. Steele, we have 37 functional ships remaining. Intelligence estimates the approaching force at over 300 vessels. The mathematics were stark. Even with the Titan's wrath, they would be outnumbered almost 8 to 1. But Marcus had not come this far to retreat in the face of impossible odds. Commander, I propose we combine our forces. Your experience fighting the Void Swarm with our technological capabilities. Are you willing to coordinate a joint defense? Commander Voss looked around her bridge at officers who had been fighting a losing war for months. Marcus could see the hope beginning to kindle in their alien faces. Captain Steele, if your ship can do even half of what our sensors suggest, it might be enough to tip the balance. Yes, I accept your proposal. Jake, open fleet communication channels. Let's start coordinating with all Alliance vessels. As the two fleets began the complex process of tactical coordination, Dr. Rodriguez was busy analyzing readings from the approaching Void Swarm. What she found in her data would change everything they thought they knew about their enemy. Captain, you need to see this, she called from her engineering station. Marcus walked over to examine her findings. The displays showed energy patterns unlike anything in human experience. The Void Swarm ships seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in what appeared to be an alternate dimension. They're not fully in our reality, Dr. Rodriguez explained. That's why conventional weapons have limited effect. They're fighting from folded space, only manifesting enough of themselves to launch attacks. Can we target them in their alternate dimension? Not with conventional weapons, but our dimensional manipulation technology might be able to force them fully into normal space. If we can do that, they become vulnerable to standard combat techniques. Marcus smiled grimly. Humanity's secret weapon wasn't just the size of their ship or the power of their engines. It was their ability to think differently about problems that others considered unsolvable. Sarah, what's your assessment of Alliance tactical capabilities? Dr. Chun had been analyzing the Alliance fleet's combat records during their approach. Their ships are well designed for conventional warfare, Captain. Good shields, solid armor, respectable firepower. But they've been trying to fight an enemy. They couldn't fully engage. And now we can change that equation. Theoretically, yes. But Captain, we've never tested our dimensional weapons in actual combat. We don't know what the side effects might be. Through the view screen, Marcus could see Alliance engineering teams beginning repairs on their most damaged vessels. Human shuttlecraft were ferrying supplies and medical assistance across the fleet. For the first time in months, there was activity that spoke of hope rather than desperate survival. Sir, the Void Swarm has accelerated their approach, reported Lieutenant Torres. New arrival time is 2 hours 30 minutes. Marcus looked around his bridge at the crew that would either save galactic civilization or die trying. They were young, most of them with little actual combat experience. But they represented the best humanity had to offer. Brilliant minds, brave hearts, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had carried their species from caves to the stars. All hands, this is the captain, Marcus announced over the ship's communication system. In 2 hours, we're going to face an enemy that has conquered half the galaxy. They've destroyed civilizations that had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humans learned to make fire. But they've never faced humanity before. He paused, looking out at the stars that surrounded them. We came out here not knowing what we would find. We built this ship not knowing if our theories would work. We're about to fight a war not knowing if we can win. But we're going to try, because that's what humans do. We face the impossible, and we find a way. The crew's response echoed through the ship, Ready acknowledgments from every department, every station, every person who had volunteered for what many had considered a suicide mission. As the 2 hours ticked away, the combined Human Alliance fleet prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. In the distance, space began to darken as something vast and terrible approached through dimensions. That folded reality itself. The void swarm was coming, and for the first time in their 1,000-year existence, they would face an enemy that refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare.